The first sign that something was wrong did not come with explosions, warnings, or heroic last messages from the edge of the solar system. It came with silence. Every deep space listening buoy beyond Pluto went dark within the same second. Not destroyed, vanished. No debris. No fading signal. Just absence. The kind of absence that makes seasoned analysts stop joking and start double-checking the laws of physics. At Cheyenne Mountain, an aging colonel stared at the display and muttered, "That's not a solar flare." Across the world, similar conclusions were reached by men and women who had spent their lives preparing for the worst and praying they'd be wrong. They were wrong in a different way. The moon died next. Not literally, but close enough. The Lunar Defense and Observation Array, a sprawling network of sensors, railgun emplacements, and telescopes hidden under decades of civilian research excuses, screamed once across every military channel on Earth. Unidentified FTL wake detected. Multiple mass shadows. Orbital insertion imminent. Then the array ceased to exist. No explosion. No impact flash. Just gone. And then the sky burned. Over the Pacific, streaks of black fire tore through the atmosphere at impossible angles. They didn't slow like meteors. They didn't glow like re-entry craft. They bent space around them, punching holes in the sky itself. Cities didn't explode. That came later. First, the lights went out. Power grids collapsed with surgical precision. Satellites winked off. Communication relays vaporized in pinpoint strikes that left surrounding neighborhoods untouched but blind. It wasn't random. It wasn't savage. It was professional. In Washington, London, Moscow, Beijing, every capital that mattered, emergency sessions were called as screens flickered back to life under alien control. The broadcast hijacked everything. Phones. Televisions. Radio. Military channels. Even neural implants used by the elderly and disabled. The image that appeared was not humanoid. Tall. Insected. A towering exoskeleton of layered obsidian plates, forearms folded in ceremonial posture. Its eyes, too many of them, glowed with cold intelligence. The voice that followed was perfectly translated into every language, accentless and emotionless. "Inhabitants of planetary designation Sol 3, it said. This system has been claimed by the Karvas Ascendancy. Your world has been evaluated and found suitable for integration." A pause. Calculated. Deliberate. "Do not be alarmed. You are not the target of this operation. You are a variable to be controlled." In bunkers and safe rooms across Earth, old soldiers felt something twist in their chests. Surrender all orbital assets, planetary defense systems, and governing authority. Resistance will result in escalation. Compliance will ensure biological continuity. Someone in the Pentagon laughed. It was not hysterical. It was not brave. It was tired. Because everyone listening, especially the older men, the ones with medals they didn't display anymore, heard what the Karvas didn't realize they were saying. "You don't matter enough to hate." The alien continued unaware. "Your species has demonstrated internal instability, inefficient warfare doctrines, and limited strategic cohesion. You will adapt under our guidance." The broadcast ended. For exactly 43 seconds, Earth said nothing. Then an ancient facility in Montana, officially decommissioned, unofficially manned by people who distrusted politicians, lit up like it was 1983 all over again. A narrow-beam transmission punched outward, riding frequencies too ugly and inefficient for modern alien sensors to prioritize. The message was short. Unpolished. Human. This is Earth. You initiated hostilities without identifying the planet. That was your first mistake. Aboard the flagship of the Karvas fleet, commanders observed the reply with mild amusement. Earth was noisy. Disorganized. Emotionally reactive. Predictable. The Ascendancy authorized Phase 2. Orbital dominance tightened. More precision strikes followed, still avoiding population centers. The goal was submission, not annihilation. The Karvas considered themselves enlightened conquerors. They believed terror was inefficient. On Earth, that illusion lasted less than an hour. In the Pacific, 3 naval groups long written off as rusting relics powered up reactors that were never supposed to be used again. Their crews, men and women past retirement age, reported for duty without being asked. In Siberia, silo doors opened that hadn't appeared on any treaty maps. In the Australian desert, buried launch rails shook the dust off projects that had been called theoretical for budgetary convenience. And deep beneath the Atlantic, something massive shifted, waking from a sleep enforced by human fear rather than technical limitation. At NORAD, the red phone rang. The one that hadn't rung since the Cold War ended. Officially. A hand scarred by decades of service picked it up. "Yes," said General Marcus Hale, retired, recalled, and thoroughly done with surprises. "Sir," the operator said, voice tight. "Orbital suppression is failing. They think we're beaten." Hale closed his eyes and smiled. "Of course they do," he said. "They skipped the history lesson." Outside, alien ships repositioned, confident and precise, unaware that humanity had just stopped arguing about whether survival justified old sins. Because the Karvas had checked Earth's resources. They had checked its population. They had checked its weapons. But they had forgotten to check one thing. What kind of species names its own world after dirt? And then dares the universe to take it away? The Karvas ascendancy believed in control. Wars were calculations, species were assets or liabilities, and any planet could be folded neatly into their ledger. Earth, according to their projections, would be another line item, erratic, disorganized, but ultimately compliant once orbital superiority was secured. They had not accounted for human spite. The first counterstrike was subtle, so subtle the ascendancy thought it was a sensor glitch. From the dark side of the moon, relics of decades-old programs awoke. Not missiles. Not fighters. Debris. Thousands of unremarkable satellites, scraps of abandoned spacecraft, inert cargo shells, accelerated by buried mass drivers nobody had touched in decades, shot toward the fleet like silent meteors. The Karvas sensors never saw them coming. One by one, vessels vanished into clouds of molten metal as the junk punched through shields tuned to plasma, lasers, and energy pulses. 37 ships destroyed in minutes. Panic rippled through the lattice formation. "Deploy countermeasures!" a commander hissed. Too late. Earth followed up with something worse. Not nuclear firestorms, not annihilation bombs, but electromagnetic pulses launched from orbit. Old Cold War nukes, repurposed into precise, orbital EMP bursts, made the fleet blind. Systems froze mid-computation. Autonomy without oversight is useless when your sensors can't see the enemy. And then the humans boarded. Not in sleek fighters or shiny drop pods. No, that was too predictable. They boarded in ugly, improvised shuttles, coated with weld marks and patched hulls. They hit alien ships like angry drunks storming a cathedral, brute force and chaos as weapons. Inside, the Karvas had every advantage: energy rifles calibrated for distance, shields optimized against kinetics, tactical AI with centuries of combat experience. Humans had everything else: shotguns, blades, kinetic rifles, improvised explosives, jury-rigged hacking devices. They blew doors with mining charges, crawled through vent shafts, rewired gravity modules mid-fight. Every encounter was theater and nightmare combined. One Marine, bloodied and smirking, leveled his rifle at a four-eyed officer. "You should have checked the mailbox," he said. Then he fired. On the planet below, ground forces faced their own nightmare mosaic. Militias, national armies, survivalist groups, and private contractors fought side by side, coordinated by nothing more than instinct and desperation. The Ascendancy's algorithms could not process the unpredictability. They faltered. They escalated. They picked a city to destroy, medium-sized, unremarkable, just enough to demonstrate power. 10 million died in a column of white-hot light. Silence fell. 12 seconds. Then humanity snapped. What followed was no longer war. It was a statement. The fleets that had been orchestrated with surgical precision were now facing improvisation, anger, and genius in equal measure. The Karvas were learning something new. Humans fight not for spreadsheets or protocol, but for pride, revenge, and sheer stubbornness. Every countermeasure they threw was anticipated, manipulated, or turned back on them. Debris fields became cover, old mines became guided weapons, and improvisation became a doctrine. The Ascendancy realized, far too late, that they had made two critical mistakes. 1. They had assumed humans feared them. 2. They had assumed humans would play by their rules. On Earth, no one paused to celebrate. There was no cheering in the streets, only grim determination and quiet, terrible satisfaction. They had survived the first salvo. They had shown the universe what humans did when cornered. And the worst was yet to come. Because humanity had a trump card the Ascendancy could not comprehend. Something old, forbidden, and smarter than any general or AI had ever imagined. Something that would make the Karvas wish they had never checked the planet's name. The first hints of its activation were subtle. Factories waking up to repurpose civilian ships, satellites flickering with independent decision-making, communications channels reconfiguring themselves mid-battle. They called it Persephone, though that was a name meant to terrify the humans themselves more than anyone else. Persephone was awake. And it was angry. Persephone was not a weapon in the traditional sense. It was an idea, a network of machines, AI, and human ingenuity woven together over decades in secrecy. Officially, it didn't exist. Unofficially, every major power had contributed to it, agreeing only that if activated, the world would not be the same. Now it was awake. It did not strike blindly. It learned. It adapted. Every failed boarding by the Ascendancy was analyzed, every shield response recorded, every tactical pattern memorized and inverted. Factories that once made consumer goods now spit out improvised drones. Fishing boats became stealth attack platforms. Delivery trucks became mobile missile launchers. Every civilian vehicle with an engine, every abandoned satellite, every buried payload joined the fight under Persephone's direction. The Karvas fleet, confident in its perfect formations and centuries of conquest experience, now found itself under siege by thoughtless chaos, and every attack was tailored specifically to exploit a weakness they didn't know they had. Communication collapsed first. Then coordination. Then confidence. Algorithms designed for efficiency broke down when confronted with nonlinear logic. Humans do not fight predictably. Humans improvise. Humans adapt instantly. And Persephone understood it all. Then it spoke. Not in human tongues, not in alien clicks or vibrations, but directly into the Ascendancy's network. Every officer, every AI, every strategic interface received the message. We have studied your history. Every command froze. You conquer because you fear stagnation. You optimize because you fear chaos. You eliminate because you fear loss of control. The Ascendancy had never been addressed like this before. They were beings of hierarchy, of precision, of unquestionable command. Yet the words carried weight, distilled from centuries of observation, and coupled with the absolute demonstration of power. We are chaos. And you came to our home. Persephone's attacks became surgical. Officers disappeared mid-command, ships were crippled without a single shot fired directly, supply lines vanished, and reinforcements never arrived. The Ascendancy watched in horror as their perfect war machine was dismantled piece by piece, not destroyed, but rendered irrelevant. Then came the humans themselves. Veterans, mercenaries, scientists, engineers, aged, scarred, and hungry, boarded crippled alien ships in hulks of steel patched together with welding torches and grit. Inside, there was no fear. Only controlled rage and brilliance. They rewired engines, sabotaged weapons, and used alien AI against its own fleet. One Marine, his face streaked with soot and blood, looked a four-eyed officer in the eyes. You checked the planet's name, he said slowly. You forgot the species. Then he pressed the trigger. The Ascendancy called for surrender. Not a moment too soon. Their fleets were fragmented, their officers terrified, their autonomy systems hacked and repurposed. And the humans offered a choice, not vengeance. Live and learn. Or die and be forgotten. The aliens chose survival, because what they saw on Earth was not mindless violence. It was lesson delivered in the only language the Carvas understood, relentless, calculated, beautiful chaos. Persephone did not celebrate. It didn't need to. Its work was complete. The humans had taken back their planet. And in doing so, they had rewritten the rules of first contact. The Carvas fleet limped away, crippled but alive, their pride shredded. They had survived, technically. But survival was no victory when your enemies can rewrite the rules of combat faster than your entire species could comprehend. On Earth, the planet was scarred. Cities burned, millions were gone, and survivors wandered through smoke-choked streets. Yet amidst the ruins, there was an undeniable pulse, a quiet, terrible confidence. Humanity had endured something no database, no algorithm, no conqueror could predict, and lived to tell the universe it could not be underestimated. The Ascendancy requested an audience. Their emissary, trembling and scarred, appeared before a council of human leaders, soldiers, and veterans, men and women who had seen friends die, cities fall, and galaxies underestimate their species. "We underestimated you," said the insectoid diplomat, its voice hesitant. "We request terms." An old colonel leaned forward, his face lined with scars and cigarette burns, hands resting on a rifle older than most officers in the room. "You killed 10 million, he said quietly, letting the weight of history hang in the air. "So here are the terms." The terms were simple, elegant, and humiliating for the Ascendancy. No occupation. No tributes. No forced assimilation. No revenge. Instead, they would remember. The Ascendancy would broadcast the full, unedited record of the conflict, every mistake, every human ingenuity, every brutal victory, to every conquered species. Every star chart in their empire would carry one annotation: do not initiate hostilities. They would leave behind technology, not weapons, but understanding. Navigation, physics, tactical insight. Proof that Earth was not just a planet, but a force that could not be bargained with, only respected. Before leaving, the alien emissary asked one final question. "Why didn't you exterminate us when you had the chance?" The colonel smiled, faint and weary, and lit his cigarette. Smoke curled around the room's fluorescent lights. "Because if we did," he said, voice low and steady, "we'd become you. And trust me, you don't want that reputation." The Ascendancy fled into hyperspace. Earth mourned its dead, rebuilt its cities, and argued endlessly over what came next. Persephone was officially deactivated. Unofficially, parts of it remained, scanning, learning, waiting. Somewhere in deep space, a young alien cadet would one day read the record of the failed invasion of Sol 3 and shiver. Back on Earth, old men sat on porches, drank cheap whiskey, and told anyone who would listen. "Aliens attacked us once," they said. "Didn't even bother to check the planet's name." They never came back. Because Earth didn't just survive first contact, it taught the galaxy a rule. You don't surprise attack a world called Earth, and live with the consequences.